Hey guys, the best high school center in the country won't be playing basketball for the University of Kentucky. That's right, let's talk about that. But at the end, let's also discuss the terrible process Pope mentioned. Let's move on. The news that the best high school center in the country, Arafan Diane, a five-star with a rare physique and above-average technique, will not be wearing Kentucky jersey inevitably generates repercussions in the Big Blue Nation. But when viewed with a broader perspective, it helps contextualize the new competitive environment that Mark Pope faces and at the same time reinforces certain silent advancements within the program itself. Diane, a giant from Guinea and developed at Iowa United Prep, is exactly the type of talent that attracts national attention. Not surprisingly, the 247 Sports Composite ranks him as the 13th best prospect in the 2026 class and the best center available. His game combines natural strength, refined touch, court reading, and agile feet, attributes that have led analysts like Zach Welch of Pro Insight Basketball to highlight his potential to dominate the paint and circulate as a true playmaker, something rare for players of his stature. The decision-making process was as competitive as his talent suggests. Kentucky was in the running until the end, even making an official visit in September, shortly after offering him the program's first scholarship to a center in the 2026 class. Pope acted early, identified the talent, opened doors, and took Diane to Lexington even before the other finalists. The coach not only prioritized him, but moved quickly and decisively. Even so, the race ended with the announcement of Diane's move to Houston, precisely on her 18th birthday, after the Texas University also received its last official visit. What is striking, however, is that even with certain connections that could theoretically favor Kentucky, such as the presence of Damon Archibald, Pope's brother-in-law and Diane's current coach at Iowa United, the young center's decision was based on his own logic. He saw an interesting path in a program that has recently excelled in developing big men, such as freshman Chris Sinak Jr., who already leads the team in rebounds and averages close to a double-double. This is the current picture of high-level recruitment in college basketball. Competitive, unpredictable, and less dependent on personal connections than a decade ago. And it is precisely here that Mark Pope's work begins to stand out positively. The Kentucky coach has been operating with speed, aggressiveness, and vision. Kentucky didn't lose Diane due to inaction. On the contrary, it was the first major program to make an offer, and that communicates something important to the national scene. Kentucky remains committed to competing for top talent from the start of the cycle, not just reacting when stars are already on their way. There's also merit in how Pope is rebuilding the program's market perception. He lured Diane in for an early visit, managed the process seriously, and placed Kentucky among the 5 finalists for the most valuable center in the class. In a scenario where what's next for Kentucky's basketball recruitment? What comes next for Kentucky's recruitment is actually a new phase full of pieces moving at the same time, requiring fine-tuned reading from Mark Pope and his team. Arafan Diane's exit from the list of options, especially since he was the number 1 center in the 2026 class, opens up space for the program to reorganize its priorities on the board, but it doesn't mean UK is without strong alternatives. On the contrary, recent movement shows that the scenario is still broad, competitive, and, above all, fluid. There are several prospects from the 2026 class who still have offers from Kentucky, but this doesn't mean active involvement in all cases, something common at this stage of the cycle. The screening intensifies, and the staff focuses its energy on the names that actually advance in the process. A clear example of this came this week, when 5-star point guard Darren Rippey Jr. narrowed his final list to 5 universities and left the Wildcats out. A decision that, while causing a stir, doesn't significantly alter internal planning, as Kentucky hadn't been pushing for its signature. What's really drawing attention right now is the closing of the early signing period. Wednesday marks the last day for immediate commitments, and Kentucky arrives at that date without any recruits from a graduating class of high school. It's a curious fact, but not surprising within the new dynamics of the program under Pope, which have been operating with strategic patience, targeting elite names, keeping doors open, and avoiding rush commitments just to fill vacancies. One of these elite names is Bobo Oladiton, a 5-star wingman who will announce his decision Wednesday night. His finalists include Arkansas, Georgetown, Kentucky, and Maryland. The Terrapins are considered favorites, largely due to their geographic proximity to Washington, D.C., his home region, a factor that often weighs heavily in these choices. Still, Kentucky's presence among the final options reinforces that the program remains competitive in the most coveted recruits. But it's on the near horizon that the most promising piece emerges: 5-star power forward Christian Collins. He stands out as the most likely pick for Kentucky, choosing between UK, USC, and UCLA. Collins offers the profile Pope has been insistently seeking: court versatility, size with mobility, and a high development ceiling. The competition is tough, especially with the weight of the California market, but there is confidence in Lexington that the relationship built throughout the process will put the Wildcats in a solid position. The outlook, therefore, is one of expectation, but not urgency. Kentucky's recruitment is in a phase where quality is the absolute priority, and this naturally makes the process less immediate. Still, it's evident that the program is present, active, and competitive on the fronts that truly matter. With Collins on the immediate radar, Oladiton making his decision tonight, and new moves expected for the beginning of 2025, Mark Pope's future chessboard remains open, challenging, but full of real possibilities. Mark Pope doesn't mince words, and this week he raised the tone to a level rarely seen in coaches of giant programs like Kentucky's. His public warning was loaded with frankness, vulnerability, and, paradoxically, a kind of strength that only those truly committed to rebuilding can demonstrate. If the disorientation had already sounded bad in the previous press conference, what Pope said now clearly exposed the turbulent moment the team is going through. Right now, we're not managing to deliver on what we promised. It was a harsh, almost disconcerting diagnosis, but also a call for what's to come. The question that triggered everything was simple: what exactly is missing? Pope tried to deflect, saying the answer would be too long, but when he resumed speaking, he delivered a raw x-ray of the team's state. According to him, what Kentucky believed it carried as its identity: dominant physique, aggressive confidence, unwavering posture, simply no longer exists. Consecutive losses to ranked teams have forcibly ripped away that facade, leaving BBN facing a deeper and more complex picture than isolated mistakes or bad nights. Pope's description wasn't technical, it was existential. He spoke of pain, fear, and a kind of emotional reconstruction that transcends tactics. I feel like the identity we thought we carried may have been ripped away from us, and we're facing reality now. And it's an incredibly painful process. It's a terrifying process if you approach it the right way. It can be a galvanizing process. There's an honesty here that contrasts sharply with the typical vocabulary of college coaches, who prefer to avoid public drama. Pope did the opposite. He faced a drama, named it, and put it on the table. It's not just the team's identity that's being questioned. It's the structure upon which it was built at the start of the season. The initial confidence has been exposed as illusory. The physicality that seemed like a differentiator is now proving insufficient. The bold style with which the team opened the year crumbled against more prepared opponents. This recognition, however, is not a sign of surrender. It's a milestone. Pope understands that the rebuilding process will be demanding and, therefore, galvanizing. BBN, accustomed to quick responses and immediate results, is being asked to traverse terrain that, for now, offers more questions than answers. The coach concluded with the most weighty and most necessary phrase of the press conference. Either we rise to the occasion or we don't. And that's the beauty of sport. You either succeed or you don't. Right now, we're not succeeding. This admission is harsh, but it's also the kind of statement that separates programs that merely react from those that transform. The time for lengthy explanations, comfortable analyses, and easy promises is over. Now is the time for friction, hard work, and redefinition. Pope didn't shy away from this. On the contrary, he faced the terrifying process head on. And often, that's exactly where great teams are reborn. Comment